welcome to Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. My name is Brandon Adams. This is Dog Nation's recruiting insider, Jeff Sindell, and we're glad to be with you in these final stages of the 2019 recruiting cycle. On today's program, we're going to try to cover a lot of bases. We will do our best to figure out how Georgia finishes off its run in this 2019 class, but we'll also look ahead a good bit as well with 2020 names, as Georgia is certainly not wasting any time, Jeff, establishing those relationships. A lot of these have been long-standing, but certainly Georgia looking to make a lot of hay with its 2020 class. At the same time, it's trying to close the book on 2019.
Yeah, I don't know how most of our folks feel out there. I'd love for them to share their thoughts on our feedback channels, the comment sections, or whatever. But to me, I don't know. I kind of feel like maybe the reader interest, and you can be our own program director on this one, but I feel like a lot of the reader interest right now is on 2020 and who are the names and who are the big names Georgia can get back in with, rather than maybe the 1 or 2 or 3 slots left for 2019. I just think there's probably more buzz building right now, considering Georgia's at least 94% of the way done with the 2019 class.
So we'll try to do both those classes on today's program, and we're going to begin with something I think you're going to really love, a great conversation with the 5-star signee, the defensive lineman Travon Walker. And Jeff, in this discussion, eventually it's going to build to, I think, a pretty interesting statement from Walker, really calling out to, speaking of the 2020 class, the 5-star pass rusher from the 2020 class, Bryan Breese, the nation's #1 player right now for 2020. Walker speaks to him directly at the end of this interview, and that's a really interesting thing to hear. But that's not, for me, the only thing that's interesting about Walker here. This is a guy that's chosen to finish out his high school run there at Upson Lee. He's going to play basketball. He's doing that right now. He'll do field events one more time as a high school senior before he arrives at Georgia later on this summer. And while that may make some Georgia fans nervous to have a player of Walker's caliber not be an early enrollee, I think when you see Walker with your own eyes, the kind of physical condition he's obviously in, and listen to the degree of focus that he's showing, I think some of the typical concerns you'd have for a non-early enrollee, I don't know that you necessarily see those with Walker, just given the fact this is a guy who's clearly revving his engines and ready to get going with his career.
I think when you look at Walker, you size him up as a great athlete, great prospect. The things you kind of learn from the conversation is, what does Georgia view him as? What type of role? He mentions a player parallel that's pretty interesting. What he's hearing from his boys, his flatmates. 3/4 of that room that he's going to be rooming with is filled right now with Tresman Marshall, Nakobe Dean, and Nolan Smith. But you also hear a little bit of that, and this is simple wordplay here, Brandon, kind of 2020 vision he hopes that he has for the next class at Georgia.
So updates to come on Kyrie Elam and Nick Cross and everything else that Georgia could close out its 2019 class with. But for now, though, one of the centerpieces of that class was Travon Walker. Dog Nation, that means Jeff Sindell, got a chance to catch up with him last week at the Touchdown Club of Atlanta Awards Banquet, where Walker was honored for a terrific season. The discussion of Bryan Breese, as we said, that comes up. The outlook that Walker has for his UGA career, that comes up as well. This is a really good interview. I loved seeing it myself, and I think you'll like it just as much as I did here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger.
Jeff Sindell here with DogNation.com, here with Travon Walker. And I mean, if folks didn't know you were committed to Georgia, they'd be worried a little bit about all this purple. What you got going on here?
Just a little style. That's all it is.
How hard was it to get size 15 in those, man?
Went too hard. Got Shoe Depot, so it went too hard.
So, Trayvon, what's your thoughts now? You're probably playbook time, workout time, getting ready time in the midst of basketball and track season. What are the next 4 or 5 weeks going to look for you, 4 or 5 months going to look like for you?
Just training, preparing for college. Even though I didn't early enroll, I still got a playbook. So, not the playbook, but the workout book, so I can work out, get out my running, and just stay on top of all that. So I'll be on top and ready to go when I get on campus.
What have they told you about preparation and being ready? I'm sure they want all you guys ready, but what have they told you?
They just said when I get there, it's going to come even easier because I'll be competing against some of the other guys, and all the conditioning. Don't worry about all that. It's just going to come to me.
So I know you boys that are already there have told you a little bit of insight about what it's like to be a college man and the workouts. What have they told you so far?
So far, only thing I really heard so far was that it's just the workout, the reps. It's so many reps that's the only hard part about it. But the classwork, none of that's hard yet to them. So.
The workouts, though, you've heard about the workouts.
Oh, yeah, a lot of reps. They say it's a lot of reps, but it's just not. It's heavyweight, but not as heavy.
Trayvon, what's the plan? Has it been articulated to you about how you would be used coming in? What sort of plan? What are you coming into thinking like?
I'm going to come in like a Tyler Clark type. Then I could play from inside to outside. So like we play Auburn, bigger teams, and then I can go to like a more of a defensive end, outside linebacker type. But then sometimes, most of the time, I'll be rotating from defensive end and D tackle.
Do you have any hopes for the rest of 2019? Maybe 2 or 3 more spots left. Is there any guys that you hope to see join your signing class there at Georgia?
Me, like, right off, I mean, I can't really just think about anybody right off right now, but, like, Coach he just said whoever comes, like, the best, he's going to get the best for the few spots we do have left.
How would you describe the 2019 class as it is right now and those guys? How do you feel about the guys you're going in with?
I feel pretty good. We got a good class coming in. A lot of people didn't think we was going to get another good class to come in this year, so we're going to see how it goes.
Goals at Georgia. What are you coming in there wanting to do?
I'll have to say my goal for my freshman season will have to be just getting on the field, showing people what I could do, living up to the expectations of being one of the top recruits coming out of high school.
So you still got basketball season, and then you got track season. How does that affect your training for football and getting ready? I guess you're going to show up, in late May?
Our graduation will be on May 25th, so I'll get there around like May 29th. But like with track and all that, it won't put off any of my working out stuff because I can work out, do my football workout, and still just go throw a little shot put at practice. Then I don't have to go to all the meets. I'm just going to go to like the big meets, state, region, all that type of stuff. So it's not going to slow me down any.
It's January the 25th, I believe. Where were you at a year ago today? Honestly, looking back at your decision with your recruiting, where were you at about a year ago?
About a year ago today, it'll have to be somewhere out of like Clemson and Georgia, still out of those two. Because Georgia really, they've always been at the top. It's just, I grew up here. Should I go adventure off, branch off to another school? But Georgia.
One more last thing. I think the 2020 class, the 2019 class had a lot of recruiters, a lot of leaders, a lot of guys that work guys on the DL a little bit. What do you think about the 2020 class? Do you know any of those guys? Is there anybody in the 2020 class that you hope commits to the G as well?
Right now, one main person that I'm looking at in 2020 is Bryan Breese. I've been close with him since the opening, and me and him we got a great bond. Like, he's one of the guys that I consider like Nolan, one of my best friend type guys. And he's just been there, and I've been there for him whenever he needed me. He hit me up with recruiting. Like, if he needs help in his recruiting process, he'll just hit me up and go from there.
I guess it's safe to say that you guys have built quite a relationship already, right?
Yeah. Most definitely.
What will you tell him about Georgia?
I'll just say, I won't pressure anybody into making a decision for themselves because I can't speak for no one else, but I'll just tell him it's a great place because he can see for himself that it's a great place, and everything else just going to come.
Sounds like you and Nolan might host him on his official or something like that.
Oh, yeah. We got you.
All right, Travon Walker, DogNation.com. Thank you for the time. He's picking up another big award.
Derek Tillman in our Facebook comment section was talking about Walker's styling and profiling there, and I have to admit, even though I'm not the biggest fan of the purple and the orange, that's a pretty good look that Walker's pulling off as a part of the Touchdown Club of Atlanta Awards banquet last week.
What about the shoes, man? Size 15s and those purple flats. That's something like Ric Flair would talk about right with Shivani right before a big match, right?
Alligator shoes. Now, I don't believe the Walker's were. That's what Flair would have said, and he's looking good in those purple shoes there, to be sure. James Bryan in our Facebook comment section was also commenting on kind of the Barry White sort of bass in the voice of Trayvon. That is not a guy that sounds like an 18-year-old when he talks, or Trayvon may even still be 17 for all I know. But that is not a guy that sounds like a young teenager when he speaks. He does kind of go down to that low register. He's an octave or two below a lot of grown men for sure.
I mean, when you look at what Trayvon Walker does now, and again, probably might even win the one-on-one competition among the Georgia 2019 signees. That, weigh in there, guys. I think I'd put my money on Trayvon Walker right there. But imagine how Nakobe Dean feels seeing guys like Zion Logue and Trayvon Walker saying, all right, these are the guys that are going to keep me
Occupy
clean.
blockers for sure. Yeah, that's really exciting to think. And before we get into what Walker had to say about Bryan Breese and learn a little bit more about the recruit that Walker's making his pitch to, let me give you one more comment from our YouTube comment section. That comes from K9 Blues. And this is on a more serious note, but K9 says that when it comes to Walker, the fact that he's not an early enrollee, K9 says, listen, I wish he wouldn't have fooled around with this basketball stuff. I wish he'd be at Georgia right now with the other early enrollees. And my opinion on this is a little bit different. Jeff, I've said this a lot. Defensive line is a challenging position for freshmen as it is, so I think expectations, even for an elite player like Walker, have to be tempered somewhat because of that. But, if I was afraid he was going to be sitting around playing Fortnite the whole, winter, spring, and summer, then I would want him at Georgia too. But he's playing basketball, and you can see right there he's in good physical condition because of that. The field event's much the same way. This is a guy that even though he's not going through the Georgia weight program yet, and he's not a part of that Georgia program yet, he's still taking his physical condition very seriously because he competes in these other sports very intensely. And it sounds like from that conversation, Georgia's also telling some things to work on with his own individual weight program until he gets to Georgia. I don't really have a problem with his level of focus despite the fact that he's not an early enrollee.
Well, number one, he's only about 2 hours away from Athens. I fully expect him, when he's not playing basketball, to be in Athens a lot of weekends in the spring, to be watching practices, also be working out. I know he's got the manual about the Georgia weight program manual and everything to get him ready, but I think one neat little tidbit for me is watching all of those montage. Some of those are only like 2 years ago, and you see like how much Trayvon Walker has matured in two years, guys, and he's growing into a ginormous dude. Those pictures you see there with him and his family, that's just from last May. And look how he keeps growing. That's him throwing the shot put and everything else like that there. And the guy keeps getting bigger, 6'5 and a half, about 275, 280. Bright future for young Walker at Georgia.
Yeah, he's showing the maturity of a class leader as well when he calls out 2020 defensive line prospect Bryan Breese, who Barry Kane in our Facebook comment section says, hey, I heard that he was a J.J. Watt level player. Well, let's find out a little bit more right now about the player Brizzy, that Walker wants to join him at Georgia. This relationship that goes back now quite some time, not just with Walker and Brizzy, but also with Nolan Smith and Brizzy as well. Nolan told you that in an interview that we've seen from the All-American Bowl in San Antonio from earlier in the month. And one of the things that we do know is just the same way that Trayvon Walker is a very good basketball player, Bryan Breese as well. And I guess when it comes to recent contact that the Georgia coaches have had with Brizzy, it's actually come through these basketball games. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, you can come visit the basketball games and visit the schools on a recruiting visit. And the Georgia staff has came almost in full force, not quite everybody, but almost in full force, to visit Brizzy on the basketball court and on the hardwood. And everybody wants to make comparisons. He's about 6'5 and a half now. He's about 280. Looks like the young man grows about 1/3 of an inch every time I see him. And that's basically now every couple of months. And I'm going to say one more thing. We've talked about this before in this program, but when you see Bryan Breese around Trayvon Walker, Nolan Smith, some of those guys in the 2020 class, they have a true friendship already built there.
Yeah, that's nice to see. Justin Sisk also says, with Walker being a dog, no reason that Trey Scott should be getting any heat right now whatsoever, especially if he lands Bryan Breese. And that is one of the untold stories here. The Trey Scott, a assistant coach for Georgia, a lot of folks didn't think they knew a lot about before Georgia hired him. His resume wasn't very long, but the impact that he's had with the Trayvon Walker, some of the other 2020 names, Trey Scott's quickly making a name for himself as a pretty elite assistant coach for Georgia, is he not?
Yeah, I had this conversation with young Bryan recently about, like, hey, defensive coordinator, are you worried about that? What's going on there? I asked him, is he giving it a watchful eye? And he said, no, not really, man. He said, Coach Smart and Coach Scott, those are the guys I talk to at Georgia. Those are the guys I feel really comfortable with. He says he knows Coach Smart, Kirby Smart, will find a great defensive coordinator for Georgia. And really, he just bases it off of the relationship with Smart and the relationship with Scott. Guys, that's a very big one there with Georgia. And he says pretty bluntly that those two guys can make him into the player and person he hopes to be coming out of college.
All right, a couple other things. We'll hear from Brizzy himself in just a moment. Before that, a lot of our Dog Nation daily comment sections, we have a guy that had taken to calling Brizzy Luca Brasi because the Bryan Breese sounds a little bit like Luca Brasi, the character from The Godfather. But one of our producers, Connor Riley, pointed out that The Luca Brasi, Bryan Breese comparison might not be a good one because for those of you who know the Godfather lexicon, Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes, so that's not necessarily a good situation. So Connor Riley took to Photoshop to maybe try to give Bryan Breese a different nickname. Y'all take a look at this and see if you think this works. How about Bryan Breese as the Godfather? Does that work as a nickname for Breese? Now, we didn't get the Dom the Bomb, Dominic Blaylock nickname really off the ground very well. Can we make the Godfather stick for Brizzy? What do you think about that?
I like it. What about maybe the Dogfather or something like that?
Don't mind that either.
And are you maybe you'd be happy to say when everyone else, every other school's chances for Brizzy are sleeping with the fishes and something like that?
Settling off family business. I wouldn't mind doing a little bit of that myself. So good job by Connor for that. Let me let you also hear from Brizzy as well, because you mentioned the strong tie that he has with Travon Walker, who we just heard from, and Nolan Smith, who I mentioned with. And when Brizzy talked about what he likes about Georgia and how he feels about the Dogs, it is that relationship with some of those players that he did mention. This is a conversation that you recently had with the five-star 2020 prospect. Here's what he said about the way that he feels about Georgia right now.
What's the mindset with that program right now? How do you feel about them?
I still feel the same way, especially with Nolan and Trayvon, and we're getting a lot of really good recruits. And I love Coach Scott and Coach Smart.
Now, to be fair and balanced here for a moment, as he told you, Georgia's not the only school that he has friends on the roster, whether it be recent signees or players in the roster. He's got friends in a lot of different schools, but there's no doubt, you've seen this with your own eyes, he does feel a pretty significant bond with Walker and Smith right now.
Let's put it this way. College party, everybody works the room, everybody slaps some hands, everybody says hi, but then there's a group of guys that some people just click with, and when Brandon was in college, everybody wanted to hang around him and talk Georgia football. But with Brizzy, sooner or later, all things end up with Nolan and Travon Walker and Brizzy, and most of the time those guys are laughing, and a lot of times Legend Cavazos also shows up.
So let's also talk about what's next for Brizzy. The next big domino to fall for him, some official visits. Some of these may start this spring, but as Brizzy says, it's really those visits that are going to be key for him feeling confident about the decision he wants to make. Here's a little more from Brizzy.
What do you think you still need to do?
I think just my officials, honestly. I think I need to take all my officials. I've been told that by a lot of even recruits and people committed to places. Just take my officials, and after I take my officials, I think I'll have a pretty clear understanding.
So Lynn, let me let you hear one more from Brizzy. He says those official visits are going to be key for me in feeling good about where I'm going to go. And some of those could start pretty soon as this spring. A couple of those schools seem to already be pushing for some official visits. So Brizzy says he could be on his way to some OVs sooner rather than later. Here's one more from the 2025 star.
Yeah, I say I'm privately probably down to like 3 or 4 right now.
Are you going to take spring officials?
Yeah, I'll probably take 2 or 3 in the spring, and then it's not like take 2 or 3 in the fall as well.
So he's down to a top 3 or 4, he says, and based on some of the chatter as of late, we could probably make a strong guess as to who that might be. A couple of these may come this spring. A couple of these may come in the fall. Jeff, your reporting seems to indicate the Georgia official visit may be one of those later visits.
Yeah, it seems like it'd be very interesting. Everybody wants to watch visits. Be interesting if Bryan comes back to G-Day again, because he was at G-Day last year as well. And 3 or 4, everybody's going to throw names out there, but he just went to Clemson. Clemson had their big hoorah at the Taj Mahal with everybody there. Lots of 5 stars, lots of big names in the 2020 class. Brizzy was one of those, and I would think, it's not really rocket science to figure out that it's probably Georgia in there, Clemson in there, Penn State in there, and maybe Ohio State in there as well. That sounds like 3 or 4, maybe that top 3 or 4 there, as I understand it.
We'll have more on Brizzy and where he fits into the picture for 2020 recruits later on in our program as we look at who are already the big names to know for the next recruiting cycle that'll take center stage as soon as National Signing Day comes at the beginning of next month. Before that, here on Before the Hedges presented by Kroger, let me remind you, that's the Dog Nation recruiting insider Jeff Sintel. My name is Brandon Adams, and speaking of Kroger, over the course of the next couple of days, a couple big events in the state of Georgia for you to be aware of. It starts tomorrow afternoon at the Kroger in Athens. Let me tell you about the former Georgia wide receiver A.J. Green being on hand tomorrow, Kroger in Athens. Really looking forward to seeing you there for that. Here's the address. It's 191 Alps Road in Athens. That's tomorrow from 4 to 6 p.m. There's some crowd control stuff to take care of here. Be mindful of that when you show up there, you're going to get in line and you're going to maybe have the chance to get a wristband. And if you do, you can get a chance to get a autograph from A.J. Green, the great former Georgia Dog. A great chance if you're in the Athens area tomorrow. Then on Friday, if you're near Savannah, how about a chance to speak to another former Georgia wide receiver that was in the NFL, Muhammad Massaquoi, and what a great story Massaquoi has to tell, and he'll be telling that in part, 318 Mall Boulevard in Savannah on Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Once again, some line stuff you have to think about. Big crowds expected, so get there early, get in line, get your wristband, and you may have a chance to get an autograph from Massaquoi on Friday in Savannah and A.J. Green on Thursday in Athens. Great to be able to tell you about that as a part of Before the Hedges presented by Kroger. All right, I told you later on we'll talk about the top 2020 targets, but there is still some work to be done for that class of 2019 as well. So let's take a look right now at who's left for Georgia in the class of 2019. Jeff's thoughts on how these should rank in terms of those top remaining targets. Let's throw it up there right now. We'll see the number one name on this list. It's the four-star cornerback Kaiir Elam. Recently took an official visit to Georgia. He ranks number one here. Jeff, how good should Georgia fans feel about the Elam situation right now?
Well, it's interesting. He took a recent official visit to Colorado. He was out there in the snow. I don't know if anybody saw those tweets and everything, but you look in that top right corner of a tweet, and you see him kind of like a snow trooper or something out there on Hoth at Folsom Field. Obviously chummy there with Mel Tucker. I continue to think Georgia's in a really good spot there with him. I think they were in a good spot prior to Tucker, with Tucker, and now after Tucker, much less with the situation there with Charlton Warren. You look at that name, the top targets list, I think, Mark Anthony Richards probably needs to be in that list somewhere as well. That's the factor back, the all-everything back a little bit out of Florida. You got Nick Cross in there kind of moving up a little bit for some people. George Pickens, Brett Seither. I think really 2 through 4, 2 through 5 could somewhat be interchangeable a little bit.
So let me try to rattle through a few things here. Pickens number 2 on the list, but as you've said before, this is more than just about a football fit. For Pickens, there are a lot of questions beyond his fit into a class. From a talent perspective, obviously everybody would want him.
Most talented, I don't know, there's this really popular podcaster that really wants 5-star receivers at Georgia all the time.
No doubt.
All the stinking time. George Pickens fits that bill. You got to look at a lot of complicated issues there with Pickens. Is he going to flip from Auburn? Will Georgia hold off LSU? Best player available for Georgia as well. Does Pickens become one of those guys in terms of what if there's a lot of yeses there? A yes from Nick Cross, a yes from Kaiir Elam, a yes from Brett Seither. Then that becomes very interesting for the final flurry for the 2019 class.
Yeah, now when it comes to some of the other names, let me talk about Nick Cross for a moment because he's on that list at number 4. And there's been some chatter with him. You wrote about him yesterday at DogNation.com. Cross also recently dropped a tweet that he then deleted. I think we have the image we can show you of Cross initially proclaiming in a top 4 that includes Georgia and Maryland, Penn State, Florida State, the school that he's currently committed to. I'm sure they don't love the idea of being only included as one of 4 here. So he's wearing kind of a combination uniform of all the schools, and you see the school's 4 logos in the background here. Any idea why Cross would have deleted this tweet? Because that we grabbed that off, online, but it's no longer up publicly available on Cross's Twitter feed anymore.
It's so hard to look at these things now, man. Is it still up on Instagram? Is it on his Snapchat story? Is it on his IG story? I want us to tell the producers back in the glass if we can recall that image right there. I want to speak to the mind of the Dog Nation man right here. And I want to say, are you doing any sort of CSI D&D right here looking at this thing?
No, I'm not. I know what you're going to go with. You're going to say that Georgia looks to be in the best position here because it's got the helmet and everybody else only got a portion of the jersey. But I feel like that's somewhat mitigated by the fact that in the background of logos, the Georgia G has by far the worst placement there. Bottom right corner, you can only see half of it. So, Penn State doesn't have a logo on its helmet. It can't be top of mind there. Maryland's got the ugliest helmet in all of college football. You can't put that up there. Plus, they wear a different one every Saturday. So it's almost, to me, a process of elimination that puts the Georgia G on the helmet on the image there. It doesn't mean he won't go to Georgia, but as someone that'd like to see Cross as part of the 2019 class, I'm not necessarily taking a lot of comfort from that image.
So let me. Here's my emoji here, right there. Hopefully I get that right. Everybody, follow along with me with this emoji right here.
Yeah.
If you guys are watching at home, now, wouldn't you want to put? I'm gonna say two things that might stir up a little bit of trouble right here. Number one, if you're committed to a school, wouldn't you want to put that spear? Wouldn't you want to put that spear as the school you're committed to up there?
One would think, but also you can't be hypocritical about this because Trezman Marshall said the same thing. He was committed to Georgia. He said, but he had a top 3, which included Tennessee and Auburn. And if he'd done it like this, there's no telling what that thing from Marshall would have looked like.
And this is the part that's going to make your mind go crazy, like 12-year-old Brandon here or something like that. I remember the last time there was a multi-faceted kind of, fragmented, splintered edit like this for a big recruit. That was Isaiah Wilson. And Isaiah Wilson's edit had him wearing the Georgia helmet.
That's a good point. So maybe that is a good sign. I think one of the other big stories here is recruits are going to start treating Twitter like it's an Instagram story. They're going to leave these tweets up for about 24 hours. They're going to take them all down. The responses to these tweets, heaven knows they don't want to sit there and read that stuff all day long. So they're just going to start deleting these tweets so they can't just get, mounds and mounds of mentions from upset fans of whichever school didn't get the best edit placement.
Well, it's kind of simple. If you don't want that stuff on your Twitter timeline, then don't tweet it out. Then just stay, steadfast where you're committed to. And if you flip on signing day, then you flip on signing day. I think that's very interesting how you see a lot of things where, he gives an interview to a reporter from Rivals.com. We sourced all that information, attributed all that information to Rivals on our site yesterday. And then, is he gonna make the trip to Georgia? Is it Thursday, Friday? When it was mom coming in? Is it an unofficial? Does that mean things that he's paying for the Georgia visit off his own dime to get a late visit at Georgia? I think all those things matter.
One more on the top 2019 targets, and then after that we're going to hear a pretty interesting statement from 5-star signee Nakobe Dean at the linebacker position. We'll hear that coming up. Let me mention the guy in the middle of that list, Brett Seither, the tight end. Now, Cliff Payne, watching the show on YouTube, says he doesn't think the tight end position is as desperate a situation as it's been portrayed by people like you and me who say that Georgia does have a real strong need there. Seither, I guess there's a chance he may visit Penn State this weekend. There's been some online chatter about that. Alabama's been rumored to be in the mix. Where do things stand, right? I guess the best way to ask this is, where do things stand right now between UGA and Seither? See a definite take for UGA? How strong is this bond right now? Just anything you want to say about Brett Seither, this tight end that we've suddenly learned a lot about over the last couple of weeks?
I think a few stream of consciousness thoughts here are, A, should perhaps we have put Eli Wolf's name on the 2019 targets? Probably not, since he's a graduate transfer. Can Georgia get 1 year out of him? What if all these people say yes? Is Seither one of those guys that they take a yes from? Remember this, folks. Everybody thinks about tight ends, and Georgia needs 4 or 5 of them. First game of the year last year, Jim Chaney and Sam Pittman smacked a number 42 jersey on Cade Mays, and they said, son, go out there and block guys on the edge and play tight end. I think that's what Georgia could do if they want to sit there and penny pinch with scholarships.
All right, coming up in just a moment, one of the top quarterbacks of the class of 2020, DJ Uiagalelei. I almost got that. Let me try that one more time. DJ Uiagalelei. I believe that's it. That's it, right? DJ Uiagalelei.
It's pretty good, man.
I think it's pretty good. DJ Uiagalelei has said some pretty interesting things about Georgia. Give the Dogs kind of a nice compliment. It was told to Jeff Sintel. You can read about it at dognation.com. We'll also talk about it here on Before the Hedges in just a moment. Before that, as we said to start our program, Dog Nation was on hand this past week. The Touchdown Club of Atlanta Awards Banquet. We heard from Trayvon Walker from that event earlier in our program. Also that night, 5-star linebacker and UGA signee Nakobe Dean was honored as the Touchdown Club of Atlanta's Lineman of the Year, or in this case, Linebacker of the Year, as they kind of put those position groups together. It's a great honor for Dean, capping off a terrific career at Horn Lake High School in Horn Lake, Mississippi. And when Dean stood up to accept his award, one of the things he talked about was his eagerness to be an early enrollee, be a part of the Georgia program. He's on campus now and be ready to go as a freshman. You'll be proud of Dean for the award that he won, but you'll love what he had to say about it. Take a listen and a look right now at the 5-star linebacker. So listen, we talked about Trayvon Walker not being an early enrollee a little earlier, and I'm fine with that. But for a guy like Dean, who I think probably has a better chance of being an impact freshman anyway, and that's not got anything to do with the presence of those two guys as players, but more to do with the positions that each of those two guys play. Hearing Dean talk about being an early enrollee and wanting to be on that campus is, I thought it was a really nice thing to be able to hear last week.
Was, and Dean, you got to see a little bit of him in the bow tie there. He got to hang out with some of the Georgia guys. He spent a lot of time with the Froms. He was kind of sitting at the table with the Froms at that banquet. But, you know, all this talk about Walker and Dean, it sparks a reporter's question for me, Brandon. And okay. I want to know this inside the mind of D&D here. I'm going to give you the following. One Georgia 2019 recruit will play above expectations in 2019.
Oh, now if you're going to say it,
I'm giving you a guy that will hit the nail, hit the bullseye, and be even better than expectations in the 2019 season. Who do you want to be that? Who do you want to be that dog?
So you're not saying the way I wanted you to say it. If you're going to ask me who's the biggest impact freshman, that's probably a different answer.
Yep.
But above expectations for guys like Nakobe Dean and Travon Walker and Nolan Smith, those expectations are really high. So if you're going to give me the above expectations moniker, I'm probably going to go JUCO two different ways: Jermaine Johnson and DJ Daniel.
What about Tyreek Stevenson?
Well, now Stevenson's expectations for me are pretty high. So,
so I'm talking about meet it and exceed it.
Yeah. So once again, the phrase "exceed expectations" is an important phrase there. I think that Stevenson's a player that I expect to be playing a lot, and most Georgia fans, because of his high recruiting status, expect that from him as well. I think by comparison, DJ Daniel's probably a little bit overlooked. Jermaine Johnson also in the conversation of Nolan Smith and immediate impact pass rushers. I think by comparison, Jermaine Johnson's probably a little bit overlooked. I'm not going to tell you that Johnson and Daniel are going to be the top two newcomers to the Georgia program on defense, but given the attention that Dean and Smith and Stevenson and eventually I believe Elam are going to get, I think that Daniel and Johnson are flying under the radar. Y'all heard me drop in the Kyer Elam name. I think that Daniel and Johnson are flying under the radar.
So if you would say freshman All-SEC or potential All-SEC guy, you could make one member of the 2019 class an All-SEC candidate, you would want to make it Daniel or Johnson, correct?
That's a little bit different thing. Now you're getting back to just overall performance. Now, it's one thing to be freshman All-SEC, and another thing to be All-SEC.
All-SEC.
If an All-SEC player emerges from this freshman class, I don't mean freshman All-SEC, I mean All-SEC performer, Nolan Smith's the most likely All-SEC performer on the defensive side of the ball.
Wow.
as a freshman.
There you go. I'd love to see what some people think about there. They're jumping in there. We got questions. Like to know what everybody else thinks. There's Nolan, of course, doing Nolan Smith things, but surprised you didn't mention a name like maybe Dominic Blaylock, maybe, or
now you got to understand something. If you're gonna frame this discussion as exceeding expectations, Jeff, remember I sit at this desk every day and talk to Georgia fans with Dominic Blaylock. The expectations, the longer this offseason goes, it's a long, cold winter. People start talking these things up over the course of months. At this point in time now, Dominic's going to have 10 touchdowns to exceed expectations.
Doctor, expectations right here is rendered in, but you got
to realize we woke up this morning, it was 20 degrees. People need something to feel good about, so they start thinking about what might happen, and Blaylock's name comes up in those discussions a good bit.
I would say, I'll answer the question. I think the one player you hope exceeds expectations with a terrific 2019 season, I think the name there, maybe which would best benefit the overall Georgia program, I think that probably needs to be Nakobe Dean.
Yeah, I could see that. Although, I mean, we always seem to do this. We use Roquan Smith as the spec for all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, if Nakobe is what Roquan was as a freshman, we don't maybe think a lot about him. It's really Roquan's second year when he kind of broke through for the first time with 95 tackles. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm expecting a lot more from Channing Tindall next season than I am from Nakobe Dean right now. Mm-hmm. I expect to see Dean on the field, but I'm expecting more from Channing Tindall than I am Dean. Am I wrong for feeling that way?
Well, things to think away. I even try to couch expectation a little bit. Here I go being an objective reporter again. With a guy like Nolan Smith, you got to remember Xavier Thomas was a guy who was on all-everything guy coming out of IMG Academy to Clemson, a 5-star, a top 4, top 5 overall recruit. And Xavier's probably 6'4", 270, big body, big frame. And he even took some time to crack through that great Clemson defensive line a little bit. Played well in spots, but didn't play all the time. So just goes to show how hard the transition is to go from immediate big-time contributor, especially in the box in the SEC or in upper echelon college football.
Yeah, I'll say one more quick point on this. One of the things I like to do is I like to look at the all-SEC teams and see which positions don't seem to produce freshmen. I'd say defensive line is one of those that, for the most part, you just don't produce freshmen all-SEC defensive linemen. That's just not something that you see a lot of. It's possible even at the defensive back position. We've seen some guys do it. We've seen some linebackers do it before. Defensive line is probably the hardest to make that happen, just because that's a real grown man's position group.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to dominate in the SEC unless you're like 19 or 20 years old, at least in the trenches. Even look at a guy like Quinnen Williams at Alabama. It took him a couple of seasons before he was the man and he was rolling. Easiest spots to thrive are usually the easiest spots to play right away. That's wide receiver, that's running back, that's defensive back to a lot of circles as well. I think those are the places where you should probably look for quick, immediate contributors for the SEC.
But the other thing that Santiago Diarm brings up on Facebook, he says, I'm hoping that Brenton Cox is a huge year. And, I guess for me, when I think about those guys that could really be dominant players, not pleasant surprises, but the actual leaders, the dominant players in defense, I am really turning my attention to those top signees from 2018, the Tindalls and the Brenton Coxes and the people of that ilk as my guys that I could see really leading the way for this defense. Once again, the same comparison. I expect more from Tindall than I do Nakobe Dean. I expect more from Brenton Cox than I do Nolan Smith.
I think a name in a pick to probably click for the 2019 season is tuck away that name Malik Herring.
Yeah,
defensive end, defensive lineman. I do think with Ledbetter moving on, I think it is Malik's time at Georgia.
That is Jeff Sintel. I am Brandon Adams. This is Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. We got some more deep looks at what Georgia's going to do with the rest of its 2020 class coming up in just a moment, including some of the guys that were on campus this past weekend. Pretty interesting stuff coming up on that. Before that, though, DJ Uiagalelei is not an easy name to say, but it is a name that a lot of recruiting experts are going to be saying a lot in the months ahead. Uiagalelei has been thought to be favoring Clemson. I guess Oregon's been in the mix, but don't count out Georgia yet. Y'all should go to DogNation.com, read the story that Jeff has up with Uiagalelei. I did it too many times. I was so proud of myself for doing it without flinching, and now I'm trying to go into the well too many times. Let me do that one more time. We'll edit all this out in post-production. You should go to DogNation.com and read the story that Jeff has with Uiagalelei, where he talks about some of the things that he likes about Georgia. In fact, let me throw this up on the screen, Jeff. This is the quote that Uiagalelei gave to you about what he likes about Georgia right now. He says, the players they get every year and how they're always in the run to win a national championship. For a guy that has not necessarily been thought to be favoring Georgia over other schools, those are pretty two nice little compliments for this quarterback, a player that Georgia could really use.
He's a guy that, I talked to him about it, and, maybe I'll have to get my man Connor behind the glass to give us a buzzer every time you fumble on the Uiagalelei pronunciation of his name.
Well, I will say this. Winston Mock says, Jeff, that BA is going to be at home saying this kid's name in the mirror for days just to get it right. Y'all don't know. When Tungo Vailoa first came on the scene, I really did do that. Our poor staff was waiting for me to cut a video, and I kept practicing Tungo Vailoa over and over again. It's one of those things I like to sort of think of myself as a name pronouncer. But some of these, especially Uiagalelei, takes a little more work to be able to do.
Well, with him, so I started talking to him, and one of the things I wanted to know, because he established his top 7, and it's really a top 6. He's got a community college in California in there amongst his 7. But, why did Georgia get in there? Because he named his top 7 right around the time when the Justin Fields Maelstrom was happening and this and that. He told me, matter of factly, he loved Georgia when Fromm and Fields were both there.
Yeah, interesting to hear.
Doesn't mind. He said Justin Fields leaving and maybe a vacated depth chart, especially for a 2020 guy at Georgia, really isn't a deal breaker or a deal maker for him. He likes Georgia the way it stands out. It's out on its own merits, and he's a guy. Quarterbacks get built to anchor classes. They like to have their stuff done, usually before the Elite 11. He tells me he'll likely have his decision done by the end of June, which means spring officials for Uiagalelei.
I don't think that's it. I think it's Uiagalelei. I'm basing this on the pronunciation that you put in Dog Nation. You didn't give me enough syllables, not even close. But on a more serious note, and this is something I really do want to ask you about this. Is this one of those deals, given the new landscape in college football, that when you recruit a guy like this, you're not recruiting him for December of 2020 as much as you're recruiting him for the next 3 years, that he goes to a place like Clemson, he doesn't beat out Trevor Lawrence, or they recruit another player just as good as he is, and he's back on the open market again. How much do you think Kirby Smart goes into an Uyunglele recruitment saying, I may not win you in December, but I may win you in, February of 2022 or something like that?
Well, I just think there's a lot of stuff going on. I think Archon O'Reilly had a good post up today on the site on dognation.com from Trent Dilfer about why he advised that going to be a tough road to knock off Fromm at Georgia. And I think Georgia just sets up better for 2020. That would be maybe a one-year apprenticeship following Fromm. It might even be Fromm after a banner year in 2019, maybe considering the NFL as a #1 draft pick as well. But with this guy, props to everybody that, first of all, that challenges and tackles this name, because I watched a lot of film of this kid over the last couple of weeks, and you'd be surprised how many play-by-play guys and network announcers over there on the left coast would sit there and go, the talented 5-star, or to DJ, or to the St. Bosco standout. They were running from that last name, brother. They were absolutely running from that last name.
Dapper Dan may have the best comment we've ever taken on this show. He says, how about DJ be a dog today?
Hold on, 1, 2. When we get to 3 cackles,
that's pretty good.
For BA.
That's pretty good.
3 cackles from Dapper Dan.
Dapper said something on the Dog Nation Daily comment section that made me laugh too, but this one may make me laugh more than anything else. DJ be a dog today.
DJ be a dog today.
I like that. Who should I like better? Uyunglele or Robbie Ashford? Ashford's certainly a lot easier to say, but which of these two 2020 quarterbacks should I like the most right now? I know who's got the higher rate of the two, but which one should I like the most?
I think you would take the 5-star, the nation's #1, 6'5", about 245. Look at that film. You know what I love, and this is in the story, this is a nugget in the story. First of all, my man, he can throw the ball 78, 79 yards, and he feels disappointed because he had a little bit more in the arm than that. And I know folks will sit there and go, yada, 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 Jeff George, big arms aren't all that. This young man faced Matter Day out of California, #1 overall mythical prep national championship last year. He threw 5 touchdowns on him. At one point during the midpoint of his junior season, he was completing 78% of his balls. So here's what you want,
That's pretty impressive.
When you've got a kid that can throw at 80 yards and he also completes 78% of his passes against the national schedule, that's who you want under center.
Yeah, Dipset on Facebook agrees. He says he thinks the DJ has a better, higher upside than Ashford. So we'll kind of watch that and pay close attention to that. And speaking of that, it's a nice segue into our 2020 recruiting class. We'll give you the names to know for Georgia as it really chases down some of these top 2020 targets in just a moment. Before that, let me remind you, this is Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. And I do want to remind you one more time about the big events taking place the next couple of days at Kroger's around the state of Georgia. In Athens tomorrow, the great former Georgia wide receiver A.J. Green going to be on hand for that. He's signing autographs. 4 to 6 p.m. is the time on that. Big crowds are expected, so come in there, get in line, be ready to go. Wristbands going to be given to the first 150 people. If you're there for that, you got a chance to get the green autograph. It's 191 Alps Road in Athens. That's tomorrow, starting at 4 p.m. for that. Going to be a lot of fun. And then with another former Georgia wide receiver, Muhammad Massaquoi in Savannah on Friday. A lot of you have said, hey, when is Dog Nation going to have an event in Savannah? Well, this is maybe the next best thing. The folks from Kroger hosting Muhammad Massaquoi. That's going to be a lot of fun. 318 Mall Boulevard from 3 to 5 p.m. on Friday. You get a chance to come out and meet another great former Georgia wide receiver who made a name for himself in the NFL and has a great story to tell, by the way. Muhammad Massaquoi at the Kroger in Savannah. So that's all coming up over the course of the next couple of days with the big game in town on Sunday. Now, Jeff, with that said, let's turn our attention here to the 2020 prospects, those top names to know, and a lot of these guys have recently taken visits to the University of Georgia. So let's dive into this and get this discussion going. We talked a lot off the top of the program about Bryan Breese. No surprise to see him #1 on this list. And then you get to another group of defensive linemen, or in this case an outside linebacker, with Miles Murphy from Powder Springs. And Jeff, when you think about Brizzy, when you think about Murphy, before we move on to some of these other names, you also have to talk about what Georgia's also seen happen with its defensive line, its front seven, with the recent decommitment of Warren Brinson. So with guys like Nazir Stackhouse and Jamil Burrows already in the fold, with Brizzy and Murphy as pass rushers that Georgia's chasing down, how does the departure from this class of Warren Brinson impact any of this kind of stuff?
Well, lots of things there. That's a big statement you just gave me right there. Number one, I know the star science sometimes got you a little bit on Warren Brinson a little bit. Remember, he came into IMG and started immediately. 3-star defensive tackle, but Brinson just picked up an Alabama offer, an Oklahoma offer. Very much legitimizes where he's at as a college prospect now. Spoke to him after the decision, before the decision. I think in the recent conversation we had on Dog Nation, we have it on the site, we have it on the YouTube channel. He kind of dropped some hints that maybe Georgia wasn't hitting him up as much as he liked, or maybe the attention span would wane, and he'd have to see in the long run of things where his game would wind up. But I think the recent offers legitimizes things. He told me that he thinks his recruitment just happened way too fast, and he's going to reset his recruitment now. Look at all these offers. Look at all these options. Again, he's going to enroll early out of IMG. Everybody does. So that's something to think about there. But when we flash back to that 2020 big board,
we'll take a look at it one more time here.
The thing to think about there is when Brinson kind of drifts off the committed list, I think the number 7 name on there becomes very much an important name.
Yeah.
Because Justin Rogers, for all intents and purposes, doesn't want to be a guard, doesn't really want to be a center. He wants to either be a defensive lineman or an offensive tackle at his college home. And I think Rogers now becomes very bigger for Georgia because of that defensive tackle fit there a little bit. Remember how he told us that Kirby Smart and Sam Pittman were going to be fighting for him, for his services, should he choose Georgia. And look at that big board. It sparkles a whole lot because those are all 5 stars at this moment.
Something else that James Bryant points out, the fact that there's only one name on that list right now, the top 8 players that Georgia's chasing down. Now, they've already got some commitments from in-state, but of the top 8 players that Georgia's currently chasing down, actually, I should take that back, 2 of those names are from the state of Georgia right now. What an amazing change that is for a state like Georgia that's thought to be as deep as any, yet when it comes to the very top of the top premier players, that name's not necessarily going to be in Georgia, and right now those are the only ones the Bulldogs are interested in.
Well, look at this, brother. If I had to go top 9, top 10, top 11, top 12, you still wouldn't get another Georgia name in there. If I had to go 9, I would probably put Zachary Evans out of Houston, Texas in there. If I had to go 10, I would probably go Jacoby Criswell out of Arkansas in there. If I had to go 11, I would probably go Robbie Ashford as well out of the state of Alabama. You keep going deeper and deeper in 2020, and Georgia, national footprint, plays in Rose Bowls, plays in the SEC championship game, stays in the top 5, parked as a program now mostly, and also plays in the national title game as well.
John William Adams asking about 2020 running backs, the fact that there are so many really good ones. Does that put Georgia in good shape? On our list, we have Kendall Milton. But when you've mentioned this before, the one thing that I keep bringing up on Dog Nation Daily is you keep interjecting a name in this discussion. You keep interjecting Marshawn Lloyd. Now, we've got some evidence that Lloyd was on the Athens campus last week. In fact, we can show you some of that here on Before the Hedges. This is a guy from that D.C. area. You told us on the show a week ago that was going to be that Maryland area, going to be an important area for Georgia's recruit. Lloyd there showing off the black jersey, which apparently is only for official visits. It's sort of the dress blues ensemble for Georgia football. But Lloyd's a guy that you like. He was on the Athens campus. Zachary Evans was there as well, although he deleted the evidence of that. I've told you before how much I like Kendall Milton. All these names, the fact that there are a lot of them, how much does that help Georgia?
Seth McGowan as well. DeMarcus Bowman is another guy, another 5-star. Nation's number 5 running back, I believe, out of Florida, out of Lakeland, also likes Georgia a lot. Lots of names. Dale McGee is going to look through the elite players in the country to find what he wants, especially at running back. And you just keep looking, and you think about that black jersey, man. Here's a subtopic for today. What if a recruit said, "Not going to come here unless you let me wear the black jersey in a game"? Bye. That's the right answer.
Kind of.
Right?
That's a little bit like who was the linebacker that played at Florida State that wanted to wear 34?
Ernie Sims.
Ernie Sims. Yeah. It's like, you know what? I'd love to have you, but I'm going to let the adults make the decision about how the uniforms are used.
Do you think we'll ever see the black jerseys on a Bulldog in a game?
The honest truth is, I don't understand why they haven't worn them the last couple of years. They always said they were going to wear them for or Kirby said they were going to announce it, and they were going to wear them for a big time game. For the last 2 years, they just haven't done it. I really don't understand why they're not wearing them. I don't get it.
Would you go bonkers if they announced before the Notre Dame game?
Look,
talk about TV game and marquee and seeing the black jersey. That would be a great commercial for Georgia.
I don't like them being used as that kind of, hey, let's use it as a motivational ploy to make a big game bigger. I don't like them being used that way, but there's a part of me that almost wishes they would, just either one way or another, never have to wear them again, or kind of get them back in the normal rotation again. Because the problem with Georgia's black jerseys, it was a bad look to try to put those on before the Alabama game in 2008 and get blown out. Now, the jersey's not the reason that Georgia lost the game. We've been down this road a million times. But in terms of calling them up for a big game, that put a sour taste in some people's mouth. It made Georgia look like clowns. And the 2009 Florida game is probably even worse.
Well, I would say that maybe the best method for these, and this is just simple thought here, use it for a sort of big game. Not for the UMass, not for the Charleston Southerns of the world, not for the Austin Peays of the world, but what about the Georgia Tech game at the end of the year?
I'll be very happy with senior day, whether it be Kentucky, Georgia Tech, whatever the last home game is. That becomes the traditional honor, and in your final game, you get to wear the black jerseys, and you got to stick around for 4 years to wear them. I'd be more than happy with that.
I mean, I would think that's probably a good idea because they don't want to take away from the moment. Does the jersey make you play better? Is it a reward for the seniors? There's lots of ways to look at that, but if we're in year 7 of the Kirby Smart era at Georgia, and those black jerseys only roll out for unofficial visits and photos in the locker room and the new locker room or whatever, then it is what it is. It's just simply an attraction. It's a sideshow, and then they might as well come up with silver jerseys and gray jerseys and pewter jerseys, whatever the thing is, because those would be kind of like the alternate, hang out, have fun, take a picture jersey.
Well, I'll be honest. There are a lot of things that Kirby Smart does that I don't understand at all. Now, it's not his job to explain them to me. I don't necessarily feel like I need to be in the know. But what's going on with these black jerseys? The fact that every recruit always wears them and Georgia never wears them in a game, or at least in the last couple of years, it has not worn them in a game. I don't understand that at all, Jeff. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
They do like the black jersey.
All right, so we'll have more of your comments coming up in a moment as part of our hurry up as we get as many questions and comments as we can in the next 5 minutes. We'll also be looking to give away a How About Them Groceries $50 gift card courtesy of our friends at Kroger. Also before that, it's one of my favorite things to do each and every week. It's a chance for us to all show how much we know, or in my case, sometimes how much we don't know about whatever's been going on as of late with the Georgia Bulldogs. It's our weekly six-pack provided by Jeff. And don't forget, the six-pack you need to make that game day party go really well this Sunday. Kroger's the place to go for that, but Jeff Centella is the place to go right now for the weekly six-pack of really fun UGA-themed, recruiting-themed, sometimes in this case maybe I want to guess Super Bowl-themed questions. So with that said, Jeff, the floor is yours.
Super Bowl-themed, huh?
I'm just guessing.
I actually thought that the Super Bowl is a little overplayed right now with Georgia angles, yada, 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 that I went away from the Super Bowl this week because I think everybody's been hit in the mouth with all this stuff, right? If there's a soul that doesn't know that Sony Michel and Todd Gurley and David Andrews all played at the University of Georgia by now, they've been in a deep freeze of snowmageddon.
All right, well, there you go. So what do you have?
Number 1, and one of these is going to be very enticing. This is a big cycle for defining all the different shirts for prospects. Red shirt, gray shirt, and now that new Vogue blue shirt. Here's one more. What is a green shirt?
Boy, that's a really good question. I don't have the foggiest clue.
Foggiest.
Somebody put in here and say what a green shirt is.
Could you say, if you could say Ungalele 6 times in a row really fast?
There's a better chance of me doing that. Now, I've heard of green sleeves. I don't know that I've heard of green shirt. I mean, if I've heard of it, I don't have any idea what it is. I don't think anybody else knows either. Anybody else know what a green shirt is? I'm going to assume that green means go. So that means a kid who's not on scholarship but can rock and roll, ready to go right from day one.
Calling for the buzzer. The green shirt is a somewhat dated term now for a player who enrolls early as a mid-year graduate after the fall semester of their senior year of high school.
So that means Trayvon Walker's a green shirt.
No, it means Nolan Smith and
not Trayvon Walker. N'Kobe Dean's a green shirt. Yeah.
14 green shirts are now in Athens.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So that's what they've always used to call
Dan
it.
Judson says the green shirt's also a non-contact.
Well,
I like Dan's answer better.
Well, we talked about, though, in the vernacular, gray shirt, red shirt, blue shirt. What's a green shirt?
Don't forget about the Nebraska black shirt defense, too.
We could have said black shirt. What's the name of a black shirt? It's a jersey that they'll never wear on a game at the University of Georgia.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Number 2, and Brandon, you're currently 0 for 1. I think we owe him a buzzer, right? Did we get a buzzer for that?
There you go. Thank you, Connor.
Given the 2019 signees so far, how many scholarship players that were not rated as a 4-star or a 5-star prospect?
Oh, this is a good question. I don't have.
Will be on the Georgia roster this far.
I don't have a clue about this either, but this is a good question. So I'm going to say Georgia got like 4 punters. That all count as this.
How many scholarship players? Very important.
Doesn't Georgia have 3 scholarship punters right now?
Currently have 2 scholarship punters.
I thought there was a grad transfer or something. Is he gone now?
He's not on the scholarship, though.
I don't know about that. Oh, that's probably a different topic for a different day. But so you got both punters. You got Rodrigo. You got Jordan Davis. You're going to have Logan Mitchell.
Logan actually picked up a 4-star.
Oh, good for him.
So basically, the
I'm going to say 6. I'm going to say 6. I'm going to A6.
To synthesize this question a little bit,
it's A6.
It's simply how many players on the Georgia roster, scholarship signees, players, were not a 4 or 5-star.
Yeah, it's A6.
We got YouTube in there.
17? Lloyd Dog got it right, by the way. He said B. Rob Brizzy did as well. 17?
17. There's still a few classes where Georgia didn't recruit at the optimum levels they are now. And let's go into our third question.
All right, here we go.
Which maybe adds a little bit more color to it.
Yeah.
Which one of those Kirby Smart classes had the bulk of those non 4 stars and 5 stars?
That's a pretty easy one to answer. That's A, the 2016 class.
The 2016 class.
We actually played some audio from Kirby on Dog Nation Daily this morning, basically coming out and saying in 2016 they didn't sign enough offensive linemen. He just came right out and said it. So it's one of the rare examples when a coach says, most coaches say, hey, we love our class, we got everybody we wanted. Not for Kirby in 2016. It was still like number 6 class in the country, or top 10 for sure, but it was not in keeping with the rest of these classes.
Here's a ghost of six-pack trivia future question right there. When he said that, he was very matter of fact. The day of signing day, basically Georgia didn't sign enough offensive linemen. They were going for E.J. Price now.
Yeah.
E.J. Price, by way of Southern Cal, is now at Kentucky. One of those guys that was really wanted by Georgia but didn't work out. And that class was very crazy. And it might come up again in today's six-pack.
Ooh, that's nice to think about.
Fourth question for our six-pack. Moving right along. Which one of these remaining 2019 targets, now stop yourself, is the least likely to be in a Georgia uniform this fall?
Now, why would we do this? Why would you even bring this up? I'm going to say, I'm not going to say D. I'm going to say Mark Anthony Richards.
Looking back at it, we got it again. We got
I'm saying Mark
Long,
Anthony Richards.
Nick Cross, Brett Seither, George Pickens, and Mark Anthony Richards.
I'm saying Mark. I know what you're going to say. The right answer is you're going to say it's D. George Pickens. I'm saying the least likely is Mark Anthony Richards.
Mark Anthony Richards.
That's what I'm saying.
Who would you say is
Chris Garcia agrees.
Who would you say is the most likely candidate on that roster?
I'm guessing Elam. I think
you've already dropped that Elam truth bomb in the middle.
Well, that's not true. No, that's not true. It's speculation. But sometimes for me those two things are one and the same. But so I'd say Elam is the most, and I'm not saying George Pickens is the least. I will not be drawn off sides by that question. I'm saying it's Mark Anthony Richards. Not that I don't like Mar, but
he doesn't just want a bad juju his 5-star wide receiver.
I do not. I want to make Mr. Pickens feel welcome on the chance he may be watching right now.
I'm just saying least likely. He is currently committed to another school, by the way.
Yeah, listen, Georgia flips players from Auburn.
Moving right along, that was heartburn of a question for you there, sir.
It really was.
That was a heartburn of a question for you. Given Kirby Smart's signing day appetite for defensive backs, it is hard to believe he only signed 2 of those in 2016. Which class so far has he signed the most defensive backs?
Oh, that's easy. It's 2017. They signed an armada of defensive backs.
2017, 2018, and 2019.
Yeah, they absolutely. I mean, they could have invaded Nicaragua with the defensive backs they signed in 2017. I mean, they signed 8 or something like that.
I want to. Gets a little crazy now. Now this is super Brandon moment for you right now. I'm gonna get you to show your role right here.
All right.
The Bulldogs signed 8 defensive backs that cycle.
All right.
One of them's a little tricky, but can you name all 8?
Yeah, it's Stokes, Speed, Briney, the kid that Auburn told could play quarterback, Trey Bishop.
4. You got 4 more.
Good Lord, 4 more. Gibbs.
5.
I don't remember the other 3.
I'll give you one. William Poole.
Of course. Yeah, I like William Poole.
That gets you to 6. Now you got 2 more.
Connor's giving me the Spider-Man stuff. I don't remember who that's supposed to be. Oh, LeCount, of course.
LeCount is, and the last one, the one that's tricky, was signed as a wide receiver, but is now a defensive back.
Mark Webb. Oh, that's what Connor was doing the Spider-Man thing over there.
I don't know.
He's shooting his web. Yeah.
So, folks, tell me how that becomes Richard LeCount.
No, well, because I'll tell you exactly how. He's doing the Spider-Man thing, and I'm thinking about LeCount as the Batman walking with the bat every single day. That's how my brain works. That when he was making the Spider-Man, I was thinking about LeCount walking with the bat.
Could have done that. Could have been like Santa Claus beard.
Who's got a Santa Claus beard?
Do you remember a certain...
the Christmas commitments, of course.
So there was 8. Big thing there, 8. And what's the other thing to think about there?
How did I get all the guys that don't play before I got any of the guys that do play?
Remember now, Gibbs is in the, obviously at Tennessee. Bishop's still in the transfer portal. There was another DB that really, the name never comes up. Probably makes it 9.
Who's that?
J.R. Reed.
Oh, yeah.
Part of the 2017 transfer class. He showed up right after,
for sure.
right about the same time Gibbs did there.
For sure.
There you go. That's a lot of DBs right there.
That's
Georgia
a lot.
In the mix for what? How many more? 2 more?
2 more, I would say.
2 more.
In the mix, anyway. We'll see what happens, but it's in the mix.
Hard to believe 2 DBs in that first class, because that was a nod to Malcolm Parrish, all those guys that were still around, Dominic Sanders, Trey Davis and everything else like that. So there you go. Number 1, our last one.
Wow, already at number 6.
Number 6, which position group of the 2019 class has the most signees heading into National Signing Day?
Now, so every defensive line position counts the same here?
I've got inside backer, I've got defensive tackle, I've got cornerback.
Oh, you got defensive tackle.
And I've
if that
got
be the case,
offensive line.
I want to say it's inside linebacker, right? You got Dean, you got Davis, you got Marshall.
That's 3. Keep looking, though.
Let me see the choices one more time. Offensive line, cornerback. I'm sticking with inside linebacker.
Inside linebacker.
Yeah.
Survey says
no. Defensive tackle. Logan Mitchell.
Trayvon Walker.
All that, yeah.
Tramel Walthor.
Oh, yeah. So you got to count him on this class, too, yeah. You do. Yeah, that's fine. No, that's a fair question. That's a fair question.
And you don't really, I think a guy like Bill Norton's going to flex into D-tackle a lot.
Well, see, that's why I ask you all that kind of stuff.
I didn't count him. I'm not even counting him. He's a defensive end for this class right now.
That's fine. But you're right. You got to count. You got to count everybody. You got to back count on Walthor, too. That's fine.
Walthor,
Lowe. Yeah. I'm glad to have Walthor.
Walker. There you go.
Charles Felder got that one right, by the way.
Any 6 for 6s out there yet?
No, Philip Jordan Wells says he went 3 for 6.
One of the tougher degrees of difficulty, maybe. It started out with a green shirt up front, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, what are you in a bear front right now on the 6-pack?"
Yeah, that's a little tough. You also have a nasty habit of putting some conjecture into some of yours. You have a little bit of a habit of doing that sometimes.
All right, folks, we want to do this, and we'll put our Spider-Man webs out here for this one. Okay? I want to know, can one time, can we flip the script and let Brandon doctor up the questions for old Jeff over here? Let's see what those look like.
Yeah,
he sounds like people talking about Jim Chaney's play calling and not throwing the ball enough to the tight end sometimes. That's what it sounds like sometimes with my 6-packs.
Yeah, I listen. I love it. It's my favorite part of the week. There's no doubt about that. And a close second behind that, it's a chance to find out what you all think with our hurry up as we go questions and comments for the next 5 minutes. And not only do we take the questions and comments, but we also look to give some stuff away, including a Kroger $50 How About Them Groceries gift card. By the way, speaking of this weekend, the big game, no better time to have a little extra spending money there with your friends at Kroger. So let's go ahead and roll into this right now. I still think our record for one session is 17, Jeff, is that right?
17.
So we're going to try to break the 17 on this today. In fact, let's go ahead and start the clock and get ready to go now. And John William Adams says, which position group could Georgia lose the most of over the course of the next couple of years?
Use or lose?
Lose the most of. Offensive tackle is going to be up there if you want to start thinking about next year alone.
Offensive tackle, yeah, I would like that one, and I would like running back as well.
Do you think, Jason Helm says, do you think that James Coley is going to run the hurry-up offense more?
Yes, 2.
Mark Godfrey says, he says we need Brizzy because he's going to take them boys to Suplex City. That's not a question, but I'll phrase it as a question. Is Brizzy going to take folks to Suplex City?
You got to remember, Bill Norton's the one that wants to suplex them first, so he'll get first cracks at that as well. But very interesting, Norton and Brizzy on that strong side of the defensive end.
Good question from Drew Roman. He says, Nick Cross or Elam, which one would you rather have?
Kyrie Elam.
Jay Squilla says, will Jermaine Johnson lead UGA in sacks next season?
I don't think so.
Drew Roman says Fromm over under 35 touchdowns next year.
Very quietly, 30-6 again last year with the somewhat, let's slow down offense. Let's give Justin Fields his reps in some prime moments offense as well. I think 34 is the number actually for Fromm.
Reginald Johnson asked about another difficult name to pronounce, but one we need to make sure we mention. That's in the transfer portal now. Josh Immerturbebe, the former North Gwinnett wide receiver who spent the last 3 years at USC. Is that a realistic name for Georgia? He looks like a player, but hasn't put up many stats in LA. I'm defer to the book of D&D right here. Immerturbebe, even though he is very talented, sick vertical leap, great athlete, only has 2 catches at USC. Lots of folks tend to prefer real stats. Lawrence Cager seems like maybe the better transfer thought there. I agree with you for sure on that. Charles Kaiser says, does John Rice Plumlee come to Georgia?
We talked about this last week. We spoke again on this week. I'm going to tell you what, folks, if this guy comes to Georgia, he better be an immediate fan favorite for what he's weathered to become a Bulldog.
No doubt about that. Austin Springer says, where would you rank the 2020 running backs in terms of talent between Lloyds, Evan, Milton, and Bowman?
Wow. Quickly, I'm going to speed round it. I'm going to go Milton 1. I'm going to go Lloyd 2. No, I'm going to go Evans 2, Lloyd 3, Bowman 4, McGowan 5, maybe Tank 5, maybe McGowan.
Okay.
Close stuff.
Here's an interesting question from K9 Blues. Do you think that George Pickens is a more explosive athlete when you've seen him live than Jaden Hazelwood?
No. I don't think so, especially big moments, especially the way you run your routes. Now, let's face it, Pickens can get open on anybody. Incredible catch radius, go up and get the ball. Not a burner, though, but I just think the craft of being a receiver right now, I think Hazelwood is more advanced.
Interesting comment from Dapper Dan, who says, I want Bryan Breese to be the third #1 player in the nation that we get in a row. Would it be 3 in a row? It's going to be Nolan this year. It could be Breese next year. Who was the #1 overall in 2017?
Well, people dial it in a little bit. Trenton Thompson was 2015.
Yeah.
There was not a guy in 2016, although Eason was at some point there. Fields was also in 2018 rated by ESPN as their #1. Looking at the composites, though, Nolan would be 1, Brizzy would be 1. It would be at least 2 years, and then if you back counted to somebody rating Fields #1, then that would be 3.
Charles Kaiser says, do you think Eli Wolf would accept a blue shirt?
Oh, my gosh. He wouldn't be a green shirt. He wouldn't be a gray shirt. He could never a red shirt. Remember, he was actually a walk-on at Tennessee to begin with, and he earned a scholarship there. I don't think he would take a blue shirt.
Dante Edey says better closer, Del McGee or Sam Pittman?
Neither one of these guys need to close because the game's over by the 5th inning, the 6th inning. I would say the better closer would probably have to be the biggest guy that's closed anybody late would be Sam Pittman.
Is Savon Clark, Jeremy Myers asking about Savon Clark, running back out of Dawson County. Is that on your radar at all?
Recent commit, but he's committed to be a preferred walk-on at Georgia. One of those guys, we've written about him. I actually wrote about a couple of preferred walk-ons this week joining the program as well.
So in the case of Clark, which was the question about, that's not a scholarship player, make that clear. I guess let me just add one of these two. Just give me a quick synopsis on what you see for the preferred walk-ons right now.
A lot of big guys. A lot of the big guys that are on the offensive line, these guys are just wanting to come play for Sam Pittman. The one thing I'll also share is that snapper, not likely to be the starting long snapper because Payne Walker made the 70-man travel squad, but J.C. Vega out of Buford runs a legit 4.5, 4.8, 4.55, 4.57 in the 40-yard dash. Incredible athlete there.
Maurice Carter says, do you think Georgia has a chance to be the #1 class in 2020?
Oh, yes, sir.
Charles Kaiser says, this is a good one, over under 3 scholarships given out on February 6th. I'd put the over-under at 2.5 more so than 3.
I'm going to go under.
Under 3, under 2.5.
On February the 6th. The over-under is 2.5, correct? I would go under 2.5 even on February the 6th. You might have situations where some guys commit, maybe not sign on February the 6th. Just watch and wait on that one.
And then, okay, there we go. That puts it in time. Connor, how many? By the way, Connor Riley joins us. How many did we get?
A new record, 18.
Yes, we did it. We did it.
Feel special,
congratulations.
Now, you know what? I'm gonna intercept the thought right here. We had a lot of great guys. We had a lot of great questions, but today, I think the $50 how about them groceries gift card. It's got to be the Dapper Dan Award today, don't you think? Dapper Dan getting almost 3 over-under guffaws and cackles out of the Dog Nation Daily here right now. And you didn't even share the unique spelling. I scrolled back and saw it on YouTube, and it was like he even spelled it with a little Polynesian flair as well.
Yeah, Dapper definitely made me laugh over there with the DJ. What was it? I
Want to Be a Dog Today or something like that?
I Want to Be a Dog Today, yeah. So I will definitely appreciate that. And for Dapper, that's well earned, the $50 Kroger How About Them Groceries gift card. Jeff, thanks so much for sharing a lot of really good recruiting information for us today. We're heading close to National Signing Day next week, and you've been all over it. We appreciate you sharing with us what you know today.
Got another week to go and then a Wednesday to go. Wednesday, I guess, are we going to have them before the Hedges next Wednesday?
Oh, yeah.
I guess we might do it from a secret remote location or a certain location. We'll have to figure that out, right?
We'll figure all that out and get back to you on that. But nonetheless, it's great to have you with us today. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for Dog Nation Daily Live. And of course, a lot more from Jeff at DogNation.com as well, including the forum at forum.dognation.com. But until next week, we'll see you right back here for Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger.